obviously, the most interesting questions of the book are not great power strategies, but the underdog. I mean, I'm always interested in the weaker powers. It goes back to my previous book, but if you try to understand the politics of the Middle East, the most important priority for all the regimes was their own survival. Not necessarily their country's survival, the regime's survival. And I wrote that, came out in 2008, and unfortunately this sort of theme of regime survival gets stronger and stronger, Syria being the example. I mean, it's not, Syria is not challenging the United States, Syria is challenging its own people. And then, you get the strategies of those who are challenging Assad and so on. Iran is a slightly different case, but again, the question for all non-democracies is in the end regime survival, because they're never quite sure about the consensual basis of their rule. And so that's always struck me as being a pretty good starting point. It seems to be a long way away, but one of my favourite books, which I think was made into a movie, it goes back to the early 60s, was called The Mouse That Roared. And was the idea was that a country that was down and out and suffering was trying to work out how it could do well, and it noticed that if you fought the United States and lost, you seemed to do very well out of it. And so they tried to find a way of going to war with the United States. I think they got a doomsday weapon or something, which looked like they might actually win. There's a variety of ways by which small countries approach the United States, and of course a lot of them challenge them. But the important thing to remember about contemporary international politics is large numbers of small countries depend on the United States, and that's still the case. People talk about the rise of China and the decline of the United States. The fact is that there's about 70 countries with some sort of relationship, security relationship with the United States. And what has China got? North Korea. There's a very asymmetrical relationship. And so for most countries, the United States is still seen as the power with which they wish to be associated. And you've got to be pretty, for populist reasons, sometimes because you're really annoyed with the Americans, sometimes you try and take them on. But there's limits to how far you can go successfully with that. So most of the time, most of these countries are thinking about survival. I think that's, if you're small and weak, that's your first priority. Very few of them are thinking about victory. It's just survival.